Hello, everyone. It's nice to be back with you on another Thursday. The Thursdays are times when some of the Tergar instructors are offering reflections, thoughts, and practice that can help support us in going through this time of immense change. And today is about finding the wisdom within this change. And this is a little bit of a follow on from what Mingyur Rinpoche talked about on Sunday. We've just been so fortunate to have him giving teachings each week. So I'm just happy once again to be with everyone, to be able to come together as a community. I know some people watch this live, others have been joining at the times that work in our lives. And I I have just felt tremendous support in our being in this unusual time together. And so delighted to be back here again with you. And this time we're doing it on what we hope is a helpful time for European, Russian time zones. And um, that yeah, I'm just happy to that we can do this aspect of it. So again today offer some reflections. We'll have time to do a bit of practice, and there will also be time where you can send in questions. And just knowing with the questions that very often there's many questions, we can only get to some of them, and that often it feels like in this kind of format that it can be somewhat of an incomplete answer in a certain sense, but we'll just do our best with that. And I hope that you won't take it personally if we don't get to your question, and that we will try to keep track of some of those questions and come back to them when we can, because it is just helpful to be engaged as we go through this. And I also hope to have a time towards the end where we can all offer some of what we're learning through the chat box. So stay tuned. So just beginning, going back to what Rinpoche spoke to us about on Sunday, and it was bringing in wisdom, bringing in the truth of impermanence. And, this is for me and my own life, the truth of impermanence has been something that has woken me up out of complacency over and over again. And this current time that we find ourselves in was no different. We're just in moments, and I'm sure you had these moments as well, where it's like you just watch what was gone, what's come to be, don't know. Where we are is now. And, that for some of us is an incredibly freeing place and has that potential to be freeing. And this is what Rinpoche was pointing to. It has that real potential of opening us up to uh, unlimited potential, of opening us up to all of the wisdom, the capacities that we have as human beings. And when we aren't caught in that past and we aren't grasping for that future, there is a real potential in that moment. But as we all know, that's not always so easy. And that, within practicing with this, it really calls on us to practice not only with impermanence, but also with our reactions to impermanence and the habits that keep us from really seeing impermanence as a fact of life, as a truth of life. And so, the when we speak about wisdom in the Tibetan tradition or in the Buddhist tradition, we're really talking about that aspect of wisdom that is inherent within all of us when we see clearly. And our whole practice is to help us to remove these veils of confusion and to be able to see things as they are rather than seeing them as how we like them to be, want them to be, through all of our beliefs, ideas, views, letting go of the conceptual mind to really be in this present moment as it is, seeing things as they are. And very often in our lives, we don't view impermanence. Well, sometimes we really like it, yeah. Sometimes it's a good thing. When it is the things that are unpleasant in our lives and impermanence comes through as it does because that's the way of things, then we're happy to say goodbye. We're happy to let things go. We're happy to see the tail end of something that is passing. But when it comes to the things that are dear to us, when it comes to the things in our lives that have given us a sense of security, maybe meaning, purpose, the way we've identified ourselves in this life, placed ourselves in this life, the relationships that nurture our hearts, when these all become subject to change, that's where we start to see the pain that happens when we don't accept change. And so this is our journey. How do we come into, Mingyur Rinpoche used the word freshness. How do we find this potential within change? And I think it's helpful to take it from the view where this is a fact of life, this is the way things are, and that to be able to not just stay there, because that can lead to a way that we engage with our experience when change happens and it hurts. Then we go, oh yeah, everything changes, and we dismiss it. And that's not helpful. That's not our inherent wisdom. That's not the living wisdom. That's just plastering a band-aid on a wound. And band-aids are helpful, but it isn't taking us into that dynamic place that the truth of impermanence is drawing us to. That it's not opening up that potentiality. In fact, it's a way that we're negating our lives. We could hold impermanence in a way. Well, why love anyone when they're just going to be gone from my life, when we can't be together forever, when this isn't reliable? And yet, when we understand impermanence, it helps us to really have that open heartedness in this moment where we can let love shine forth because that's the power of this moment. That's the potential of this moment. But as I said, it's a journey. It's a journey because we have habits of mind. We have a basic misperception of permanence. That, when things are going well in our life, it will be this way forever. And we can say to ourselves, oh yeah, it'll change. But then when it does, wow, very often we aren't in that open-hearted place. Very often we are uneasy with uncertainty. And so, this is where the meditation becomes so important. And, Mingyur Rinpoche led us through a lovely guided meditation just on using our body to know change. And, it may not have seemed like a big deal. We're with the breath, sensations in the breath. We're seeing how that's always changing. We're seeing how, sensations in the body are always changing. And, it's easy for the mind to lapse into, I know that. I know that. And yet, when we're really with the immediacy of it, what we start to see is in one moment something was there, and in the next moment it's gone. Oh, wow, interesting. I've even had it with something like the breath, just in a moment where the out breath ended and it was just gone. In that moment, I kind of went, "Whoa, am I dead?" You know, I wasn't sure because there wasn't this illusion of permanence that, yeah, now the next breath will come. And so with that, it's like when we start to see that everything in our conditioned experiences comes and goes, then when that happens with things that are dear to us, that we have loved, that we appreciate, that we know that this is just the way of things. This is what happens. But along the way, what do we experience? We might experience a tremendous sense of grief as things change. And so it's this is where too, the allowing what emerges in that space to be there. So if there's really a sense of sadness, a huge sense of loss, allowing that to be there because its nature too is to change. And again, what we find, it's like I remember, times where just having an intense brokenheartedness and laying out in the field and really just allowing the pieces to fall away. And what's there? We discover this for ourselves. We discover this limitless vastness, this potentiality that is there. So, it isn't that we kind of jump over what happens in a moment of change. So loss is one aspect. The grasping, Rinpoche talked about the grasping mind, and that we can have great attachment. And so, really wanting to hang on to what was and wanting it back. But when we start to really come to know that when something is gone, it's gone. Earlier in my life, I had a wonderful lesson from about this from a mouse. I had been in a relationship and I had felt very much in love. And then it ended. And it wasn't me who ended that relationship. And so there was this sense of being brokenhearted. And so at that time, then, I was living in a tent. So I went back to my tent at the end of the day and I was just sobbing. I was really just sobbing. And just in this immense place of despair, loss, grief. And as I was living in this tent, I had a little pile of nuts beside my bed. And then a little mouse came in. And the mouse came up and loved the nuts that were right beside my ear. And so this was really disturbing for me. So I chased the mouse out. I did the tent up really tight. And then I had a very distressed night, but so did the mouse. The mouse started going berserk, was running around the tent, and even at one point was running circles up the tent. And so the mouse was distressed, I was distressed, and I did not get much sleep. And I was not such a happy camper the next morning. And I got up and I went off and I did my work for the day. I came home at the end of the day and I knew I needed sleep. And so I went and I cleaned up all of the nuts, just made sure there was not a crumb left. And I got back into bed and thought, I want to sleep tonight. And then my little friend did come back in and went right to where the nuts had been. No nuts there. Chased the mouse out again, did the zipper up really tight, and thought, okay, now I will sleep. But again, this mouse really wanted those nuts, and they were not there. But the mouse went crazy, running circles again. And, I was getting more and more distressed. until I realized I am just like this mouse. There was something there. It was nurturing. I loved it. And then it was gone. And I was driving myself into this really distressed state by hanging onto something that was there that was gone. And the mouse had come in, had seen that there was nothing there, and, you know, was outside again, but wasn't letting go. But as soon as I realized I was doing just what the mouse was doing, I fell into a deep sleep and I never heard from the mouse again. And then, but it just showed me, when something is gone, it's gone. And, it also has helped me to see how much that craving for something that was what once there doesn't help it to come back. In fact, amplifies the pain of it. And so, that helps me in times like this dramatic change to to know that the life I had before is not here. The world is different today. Before this happened, I was in the phase of my year where I was traveling a lot, going to different cities, going to different countries. And, now I'm at home. This is where I am. This is my world that's happening. And for each of us, that's different, how that's changed. But and for some of us, there could be a great loss if we had a job that we don't have anymore. It's gone. Maybe we've been furloughed, but maybe it's not going to come back. And if we keep going back to the past, it keeps us stuck there. But if we keep looking to the present and the sense of possibility, it could be that, as things have broken apart here, there could be very new ways that we move into this moment, that we provide for ourselves, that maybe haven't been there in the past. The opportunities change. And so, it's how can we allow these feelings to be let go of, to allow us to fully sit where we are right now? We may be experiencing the sense of impermanence in the relationships that we are in, that we find ourselves in. Whether it's having to let go of the nearness of people, having to let go of being physically around people. But what happens when we really sit in that place where we are now? What is here? What warmth of heart is here? What caring is here? And this is just expressed in really different ways right now. From the walking down the street to people saying hello that, some months ago would have walked right past. I would have walked right past. Just the different ways of connection that we find ourselves in. Seeing how things have changed in how we relate. And that seeing how somebody maybe in our lives and in our close proximity may have been quite a buoyant person and they're struggling right now. And if we keep holding to them as to how they were in the past, we're not allowing their way of being in the present moment. We're not allowing them to be as they are. And I know I have always reacted when other people cement me in time to how I was in the past. And so this impermanence really helps us to be able to meet the people around us with fresh eyes. So I think, what we want to do is to know. I mean, I think it's really helpful for me personally to know that the understanding of impermanence is wisdom. When we really when we really know it from the inside, that and this uproots that tendency to grasp, to hold on to want to control. And so it's there as a potential. And so having it as the view, what we do then is look through the meditation to becoming familiar with this truth, being able to see it. And as we did with Mingyur Rinpoche, we saw it on the level of the body, the changing sensations in the body, which can have an effect, because then it helps us when we hit these places where the grasping is stronger, where the identification, the not wanting to let go, it reminds us that this is natural, that change isn't happening because we failed, that this is a natural law. And so it helps us to loosen our grip. And so the more we see this in our own experience, that when it hits those sticky places, then there's more of a sense of, oh, yes, and this too, and this too, and this too. And so this is why through our practice, and some of us have more practice time at this time. And so if that's the case, then we can work with this as we're meditating, that we can be just attuning the mind to change. If we're not in a place where we're doing formal practice, because what's happened through all this change is that the demands in life have us more on the go, that we're out in the world having to care for others, or we're in our homes, and the sense of needing to provide for children, for our families, is so immediate that there isn't a space to have the luxury of formal practice. But this too comes a place where we can just let the attunement to change be what we keep looking towards. And that's really helpful in the moments where an example, in a moment of sadness, I remember feeling this sadness, and it felt big, heavy, real, that the grasping mind has identified this as being who I am, and forever, the illusion of permanence has snuck in there, and it's going to keep me that way forever. But when I just was with the sadness in that moment and just started to notice little fluctuations, started to notice the fluctuations in the sensations in the body that the sadness was being reflected in. With sadness, for me, there's often kind of a caving in, a heaviness in the chest, real weightiness. But then to see that this actually had movement within it. And then, in looking at how the mind was with this sadness, was just seeing that there was different thoughts that were coming in. And if there was just an awareness of the thoughts passing through, then there wasn't the fixation. It wasn't solidifying it more. And then it was just like the atmosphere of the sadness. And then, seeing that maybe there was a frustration connected with this, or loneliness, and that there was other emotions that were there. And so all of it, and all of that was just moving, changing, pulsating. And it wasn't the truth of who I am in this moment. It was, these clouds, this experience that was very strong, but it too was subject to impermanence. And so, it becomes helpful in these moments where the emotions have such weight, where the thoughts have such power, of just seeing that this too is subject to change. And so we're going to do a little bit of practice with this, where we're just going to open to, and I'll guide us through this, similar to what Mingyur Rinpoche did, and then just bringing in a little bit more around our changing experience. So beginning by finding a comfortable body posture where there's a sense of uprightness and yet relaxation and ease in the body. And then just taking a moment to reflect on what motivates you to practice, what motivates you to be here. Just finding your own words and just seeing how this in itself is an expression of something of our true nature and its qualities, our own desire to be happy, which is love, and our desire to be free from suffering, which is compassion. And just appreciating that these qualities are within us. And that all of us have come together around these qualities as an expression of these qualities. And just holding the wish or intent that as we engage in this practice, that it can help ourselves, each other, and the world to find more ease, more peace, and a sense of well-being. And then just letting your awareness connect with the experience of breathing. The in-breath and the out-breath. And with each breath, noticing how the sensations change moment by moment. Just allowing this breath to be just as it is, a flow of changing sensations. And then opening awareness to other sensations in the body. There may be areas of tightness, tension, areas that have felt solid. Just noticing if there's any change, movement, new sensations. There may be energy moving throughout the body. Just awareness of the waves of change. And then just becoming aware of the atmosphere of the mind, the mood. Or if there's any thoughts in the mind, just noticing the changes within this. The thought arises, can become like a thundercloud, strong, stormy, and then it's gone, disappears. And then, if we feel to, just opening up awareness to the sounds around us, noticing how they change, even within the hum of electrical devices. While our eyes have been closed, just gently opening our eyes, and as the world around us has visual impact, the light awareness of these changes. Just letting in all of our experience, which is arises, is known, and disappears again. And letting go of any focus. And just resting with everything just as it is. Okay, so So I think here we can open it up, see if there's any questions that. Okay, here's a question. How can I stop self judgment and the feeling of never being enough during this quarantine? I've been trying to meditate and avoid distractions, but I feel very disturbed when I failed. I guess my first question would be failed according to who? This I feel this question. I think I have lived so much of my life with that feeling of not being enough, not being good enough. And that actually for me has been a big cycle of, faster, more, harder, do, get, become. It has that way of just driving it. So here you are in this sense where, this time where you might have more space and you're face to face with that. So, whoa, to whatever degree we can, and just to remind you, and I think I say it over and over, and I'm sure others do, how we practice with it at this time really depends on our practice background, our history, and there is other resources in the world, so you don't want to be stuck overwhelmed by things. But if, like, you're here, you're expressing this, there's an interest in this pattern, not to fix it but to know it. So it's like, as we're with this sense of not good enough, really opening to that, really allowing, is there like a voice of not being good enough that we feel like we're carrying, or an idea of how we should be, what our ideal self? And it's not that we have to go digging and analyzing and figuring out what, because through meditation, when we just really look at our experience, there's a real direct knowing that's in that moment. And so it could be that, in that moment of not good enough, we just feel a collapse of our inner world. And so just be there, allow, and with awareness, it's like the knowing. So, often the physical sensations are less compelling, less juicy, less enticing than the story we've told ourselves. So just feel that. And I just can't tell you how many times in my own life that, because it sounds like we say this instruction over and over, we just be with, but out of that, the clarity comes. Out of that, the understanding comes. And if we are doing that from a place of kindness, from a place of caring, of wanting to know, how do I bind this heart that is in so much pain over this? I mean, even the tapping in, if we can tap into that right there, that's helpful, that's useful. So, I appreciate that you're here, that you're turning up, that you're able to name your experience. And we don't have to keep following, but the idea that we're going to get rid of this can really set up an expectation that will continue to fuel that habit. And so that's where the letting it be an awareness becomes so important, so helpful. And let's see. Well, I'm not sure. Do we have other questions here? Um, I'm not sure if I've missed anything. So I don't see another question. So I would like to open it up here because I truly appreciate the wisdom that you all carry within you. And so, as we're speaking about impermanence, I would love to hear from you. What are some of the ways that and this is, you got to be concise here, but what are some of the teachings around impermanence that you're seeing in your life as it's unfolding in this time? And I think that how, just as we are in this time where uh, the change is so apparent and it's so in our face and it's not often not pleasant. It's not when we're getting more of what we liked. That this really brings us up against our own habits, our own minds, and so there is huge lessons we can be learning here, huge wisdom that we get in touch with when we listen. Okay, so we have from Mara, not to identify with waves of grumpiness that I've tended to feel guilty about. Yeah, uh, yeah. We don't need to identify, right? And uh, we can feel. I think this is often a piece, just around the grumpiness, um, that we've tended to feel guilty about something like that. So many emotions, we feel guilty. If we were at this place back into, if we were a better person, if we could do this differently, and we don't need to do that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Um, uh, let's see. Impermanence is suffering. It's through impermanence that we see into suffering. But this is, suffering is not. It it's suffering comes from our relationship to what is, not what is there when we peel away the layers of confusion. But suffering is a great teacher in this. And if we try to deny it and we don't accept that there are things about being a living being that are painful, that are distressing, and that, part of it is a natural suffering, but part of it is in how we relate to that. And so if we deny it, if we suppress it, it doesn't become a gateway to wisdom. But this is, I think, the poignancy of this time, that it opens us up to the truth of impermanence, the truth that things can be quite unsatisfactory, the truth that we are all interdependent. We can find the wisdom that comes from seeing in this way. And so then our lives become, we actually live from a way that reflects the way things are, and we're not trying to make the impossible happen. And that's where it hurts. Okay. Let's see. It seems like I disappeared. Someone's having technical problems. But there's impermanence, right? Here one moment, gone the next moment. Mm. So, um, I think we're a quieter group today, and that's okay. That there's so much, to me, potent message in this time of really just honoring where we are, and honoring, uh, looking to our own wisdom in this. And that's what we don't want to forget. That when we get pulled into, um, feeling completely disempowered at this time, and some of the situations are really hard, are um, very, very deeply challenging, that we just don't want to lose sight that we have this inner potential. We have this innate goodness within us that is a true nature. And we may only know it through the glimmers in our lives. We may only have a sense of possibility around that, but we just don't want to turn our backs on it. It's like that sense of standing with ourselves, standing with the world in this time, and finding that inner resilience that can meet this situation. Okay. Um, I'm using this experience to focus less on the things I can't control or change, to focusing on self care and love of myself. So, taking more time to explore my hobbies, cook, and reflect. And these are, beautiful qualities to come back to in this time. The sense of self-care, the sense of loving oneself. And, through loving oneself, through turning up in all of the ways that we can that are nurturing, kind, caring, this has an effect. And this helps us to have a strength and resilience. Um, Kim says, small losses are significant and need to be honored, even in the face of large losses. And the impermanence brings us into that dynamic living of life. Where we take, we're not living in complacency, where we don't see the small losses, we don't see the small changes, but it allows us to see everything in this way, everything in its changing nature. Okay, I'm not sure if I missed anything in there. Just check my no. Okay. Um, hmm. Someone said, Jody says, I was going to see my adult children this summer. They live in different countries, and I don't know when I will see them again. So, how do we connect with this now? That's what the challenge is. That's what we look to. No, so there is ways that we are finding to connect, just as we are here. There are ways that we see that love that we feel for others when that's alive in our own hearts, that there is no separation, that they are with us in our hearts. And, that with people that we're connected with, we find the ways that we can help support each other in this time. Um, uh, Starting to realize the roller coaster of stories, that there is a seat belt that I can release and really out of the seat in the roller coaster into the more open awareness and compassion. Yes, Esther, thank you. Yeah, and that, there is that sense, in our lives we try to control, we try to hang on to, we try so hard. And it's out of the goodness of our heart that we try that hard. And then, when we start to see this truth, that actually helps us to let go into that roller coaster, to know that this is what happens. Rinpoche talked about this the other day, the ups and downs. This is what happens. And it allows us to relax into the flow of life and not be defined by that flow as well. So actually, a friend yesterday, I can't remember the exact words, but she said when she let go of that sense of trying to control, she found that her knees were unleashed. It gives us more play, more sense of potential, more sense of responsiveness, other than the habits that we've known from the past. Someone says, thank you for the mouse story. Do you have another example? And so, with this, it's like there is so many examples of seeing something that was there that is now gone. And we just see it. We let that register within awareness. And that happens. That happens with our breath. That happens with the body sensations. And, a good way to practice it throughout the day can be in anything that we're letting go of. Even we've picked up a cup, we're taking a drink, we put it down, we let go. Just feeling that, letting go. Or, that we've been doing one activity, times of transition are a really good time to pay attention to this. We've been out walking, we come home, we sit down, just be in the moments of transition. We're opening ourselves up to that place where one thing that was there is gone. I love to see it in the world of thoughts, where there's a thought that I've been completely wrapped up in, and then it's gone. And boom, the world opened up. The sense of potential opens up. It's like the visors are gone, the grip is gone. And so the paying attention to loss, paying attention in this way, and it is helpful that we begin with the littler losses, because then that, as I said earlier, helps us to know that this is just what happens in this world of change, and it's not personal. But if we've seen it, and nature for me is really, really helpful. Just like right now, it's a beautiful season where I am in Minneapolis at spring. And, as I go outside, there's new buds, the green, the blossoming, and it's so beautiful. And that too, we know will change. And, if some of us might be in the fall, and it might be that the leaves are falling from the trees, and just to watch how natural that is, the letting go. This is just what happens. This is the way of things. And it helps us to feel a part of and not separate from. Our bodies are comprised of the elements of which all of the natural world is. And when we see it on this elemental level, it helps us to be more at home with this. Okay, so I think I will wrap it up here, other than I'd really love for us to take just a few moments to let go of the words, to be together, and then to just offer any benefit that has come from this time here. So just coming back into our own experience, a sense of being here together with this larger community, appreciating ourselves for being here, for turning up in whichever way we did, the interest that we have in well being, in finding a freedom from suffering, in looking to our own inner potential. Just holding the wish in our hearts that whatever beneficial energy is here can ripple out into the world and help all beings everywhere to find a sense of ease, freedom from distress, fear, and anxiety, to find peace amidst change. So, thank you for being here.